The house slept under a blanket of rain, the kind that whispered against glass like a secret. Anna Caldwell stirred beneath the sheets, her dreams soft and heavy, when a phone lit up on the nightstand. Midnight. The name on the screen, Evelyn. She frowned, half awake, half confused. The call kept ringing. Mark mumbled something and turned away, still asleep. Her hand trembled as she reached for the phone. She didn't plan to answer, but curiosity, or fate, pressed the green icon. A pause. Then a woman's voice, tender, intimate, familiar. "Breathe, I miss you too." For a heartbeat, the world went silent. Rain slowed. Clock stopped. Anna's breath caught in her throat. Her heart cracked with a sound only she could hear. What do you do when love starts speaking in someone else's voice? How do you sleep after the truth calls your name at midnight? The next morning arrived too bright, too normal. Mark brewed coffee like every other day, humming a careless tune. Anna watched him from across the table, searching for something different. Guilt, hesitation, shame. But found only routine. His eyes met hers for a fleeting second, and she forced a smile she didn't feel. The kitchen smelled of toast and deceit. Every sound, the clink of cups, the pouring of milk, felt exaggerated, hollow. She wanted to ask about Evelyn, but fear sealed her mouth. Some truths, she realized, don't need to be spoken to exist. At work, Anna stood before her students, chalk in hand, but her mind was miles away. Every ring of a phone made her flinch. The world had suddenly become full of whispers she couldn't trust. During lunch, she glanced at her own phone, scrolling to Mark's name. No message, no explanation. She typed, "We need to talk," and erased it. Sometimes silence was easier than the answers you feared. That evening, the rain returned. Mark sat on the couch, laughing at a movie, acting as if nothing had changed. Anna joined him, her body beside him, but her heart somewhere else. The flickering light from the screen danced across their faces, revealing everything they didn't say. Her hand rested on her lap inches from his. The distance between them had never felt so wide. Later that night, when Mark fell asleep again, Anna lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every breath felt heavier than the last. The whisper from the night before replayed endlessly. "I miss you too." She wondered how long it had been happening, when love had quietly slipped into someone else's hands. The clock read 2:13 a.m. when she finally decided she would find out the truth, no matter what it cost. Morning came with the same sunlight, the same sound of Mark's car keys on the counter, yet everything inside Anna was different. She moved through the kitchen like a ghost, aware of every detail. His tie slightly crooked, his cologne faint on her skin. When he kissed her cheek goodbye, she almost flinched. He smiled like he always did, but it felt rehearsed. As the door closed behind him, she stood still in the quiet, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and her own heartbeat. The silence was deafening, not because it was empty, but because she could hear the truth breathing inside it. That day, Anna found herself moving slower than usual, as though each second carried weight. She walked through their house, noticing small things she had ignored. 2 wine glasses in the sink, a lipstick stain that wasn't hers on a towel, a faint scent of perfume on his jacket. She ran her fingers across the fabric, her throat tightening. Every object whispered a question she didn't want to answer. The home they built together suddenly felt borrowed, as if she had been living in a stranger's store. When Mark called that evening to say he'd be working late, his voice sounded almost too casual. Anna replied gently, pretending not to care. The moment she hung up, the silence pressed closer. She sat in the living room, phone in her lap, staring at the screen that once connected them. The clock ticked louder with each minute. She wondered if this was how betrayal felt. Not like fire, but like drowning in still water. That night, she walked into their bedroom and opened the drawer where Mark kept his watch and letters. At first, everything looked ordinary. until she noticed an envelope tucked beneath old receipts. Inside were sketches of a building, notes written in his handwriting, and a folded photograph. Mark and Evelyn standing close, smiling at a site launch. Her breath caught. It wasn't the closeness that hurt. It was the familiarity. They looked comfortable, like two people who spoke without words. The truth didn't arrive like thunder. It came softly, with paper edges and ink that felt like goodbye. She didn't confront him that night. Instead, she placed the photo back in the drawer, exactly where she found it. Pretending became her armor, her silence, her disguise. When Mark came home after midnight, smelling faintly of rain and perfume, she kept her eyes closed, breathing evenly as he slipped into bed beside her. She could feel the distance between them more clearly than his warmth, and for the first time she realized love can die quietly, without sound, while both hearts still beat side by side. The following morning, Anna watched Mark's car pull out of the driveway. The smile he gave her before leaving was faint routine. When he turned the corner, she exhaled the breath she had been holding. Something inside her shifted. No more denial, no more pretending. She sat at the kitchen table, her phone in hand, heart pounding, and searched Evelyn's name online. The face that appeared on the screen matched the voice from that night. Soft eyes, confident smile. Anna stared at it until her vision blurred. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive like a stranger. It comes wearing a familiar face you didn't want to see. Anna drove to the architecture firm where Mark worked. She sat in her car across the street, engine off, watching. Through the glass facade, she could see him inside, talking to colleagues, laughing, the same warmth she hadn't felt at home in months. Then Evelyn walked in. She touched his arm as she spoke, her laughter light and unguarded. They looked natural together. Anna's stomach twisted. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. It wasn't rage that filled her. It was the slow realization that she had already lost him long before the phone ever rang. That night, Anna waited for Mark to come home. She noticed how carefully he placed his phone face down on the table, how his eyes flickered away when she spoke. The smallest gestures told entire stories now. During dinner, he asked about her day. She replied, quiet, letting the word hang heavy between them. He smiled politely, but she caught the way his fingers tightened around his fork. The silence between them had become a language of its own, one both of them understood, but neither dared to translate. Later that evening, Anna quietly picked up Mark's jacket as he showered. Inside the pocket, she found a folded note. Her name wasn't on it. A phone number scribbled in delicate handwriting, a small heart drawn beside it. Her body went still. The sound of water from the bathroom drowned the pounding in her chest. She placed the note on the nightstand and stared at it, realizing that proof doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, waiting for you to listen. When Mark stepped out of the shower, towel around his waist, Anna had already hidden the note back in his jacket. He smiled and leaned down to kiss her forehead, his skin still warm from the water. She looked up at him and, for a brief second, saw the man she fell in love with years ago. The man who once promised forever. But forever, she realized, isn't a word. It's a choice. And somewhere along the way, he had stopped choosing her. The next morning, Anna stood before the mirror, brushing her hair with slow, deliberate strokes. Her reflection felt like a stranger she was meeting for the first time. For years, she had defined herself by how much she could forgive, how much she could endure. But that woman looked tired now. Not from age, but from carrying love that was no longer returned. The silence between her and Mark had become heavier than arguments ever could be. She looked into her own eyes and whispered, "You deserve to be seen." The words felt foreign, yet free. She drove to the ocean that afternoon, needing air, needing space. The water stretched endlessly, the horizon gray and endless. She sat on a weathered bench, wind tangling her hair, tears drying on her cheeks. Around her, life moved normally. Children playing, waves crashing. But inside, time had stopped. Because love built on lies is like a house without a foundation. It stands until the first storm comes. And theirs had already hit. When she returned home, Mark was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up briefly and smiled. "Long day?" he asked. She nodded, her voice trapped behind the walls of her chest. Every movement of his hand, every casual tone reminded her how easily people can live side by side and still be miles apart. She studied him quietly. The way his laughter came without sincerity, how his eyes no longer lingered on her. It wasn't anger she felt anymore. It was grief. The kind that comes when you realize the person you love has already left, even if they're still in the room. That night, she called her sister Claire. The moment she heard her voice, her composure cracked. She didn't speak at first, just breathed, slow and broken. "I think he's seeing someone," Anna finally whispered. There was no judgment on the other end, only quiet understanding. Claire said, "Then maybe it's time you start seeing yourself again." The words pierced through Anna like light through glass. She didn't need permission to leave. She needed permission to live. After the call, Anna stood at the window, looking out at the quiet street below. The world outside continued. Neighbors walking dogs, lights flickering in distant homes. Ordinary life moving forward. For the first time, she didn't feel trapped by the idea of staying. She realized leaving wouldn't be running away. It would be returning to herself. The reflection in the glass no longer looked like a stranger. It looked like someone finally ready to wake up. The morning felt heavy, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Anna brewed coffee like always, but today, her hands were steady. Mark entered the kitchen, still buttoning his shirt, greeting her with the same smile he used to hide behind. "You're quiet," he said. She looked at him. Really looked, and replied softly. "So are you." Their eyes met, two strangers sharing the same memory. The silence between them stretched like glass, thin and about to break. She decided, today, she would stop pretending. Later that evening, she waited in the living room. The house was dim, filled with shadows that felt like witnesses. When Mark walked in, setting down his briefcase, she asked quietly, "Who is Evelyn?" The question froze him mid-step. His mouth opened, then closed again. The air thickened. "She's just someone from work," he muttered. Anna tilted her head, eyes sharp yet calm. "Then why did she say she missed you?" The sound of her voice didn't tremble. It was steady, almost kind. Mark's face paled. For the first time, he had no script to follow. Mark sat down, running a hand through his hair. "It wasn't what you think," he began. His voice cracked on the edges of his lies. Anna didn't interrupt. She just listened. The kind of listening that holds a mirror up to someone's soul. He talked about loneliness, long hours feeling unseen. His words poured out like water trying to justify the fire. When he finished, she simply said, "You could have told me that before you told her." The room fell silent again. Sometimes the calmest words carry the sharpest truth. "I loved you," she whispered. "Maybe I still do. But I can't love someone I can't trust." Mark's eyes glistened, a flicker of regret crossing his face. "I made a mistake," he said. She nodded slowly. "We both did. I stayed too long, believing silence was love." Her voice trembled now, not from fear, but release. She looked around the room that had held years of laughter, dreams, and lies, then met his eyes one last time. "You broke something I can't fix." After Mark left the room, Anna sank onto the couch. The clock ticked faintly, marking the end of something invisible yet immense. She felt strangely calm. No shouting, no broken dishes, just truth laid bare. Love had been replaced by clarity, and clarity by peace. She wiped her tears, whispering to herself, "You did it. You faced it." The hardest battles, she realized. Aren't between two people. They're between who you were and who you're ready to become. The night was still. The storm had passed, yet inside Anna, the air was electric with finality. Mark had gone to bed early, his presence faintly audible in soft, shallow breaths. Anna sat alone in the living room, a single suitcase open on the floor beside her. The clock ticked like a heartbeat, marking the end of a chapter. She looked around. The couch where they once laughed, the photos lining the shelf, the small plant she had kept alive longer than their love. For the first time, she didn't cry. Some goodbyes are too sacred for tears. She walked into the bedroom quietly, the moonlight spilling through the curtains. Mark was asleep, his face turned away. Anna's eyes lingered on him, not with anger, but with a kind of mourning. There were no words left to say. She placed her wedding ring on the nightstand, next to his phone, the same phone that had shattered everything. As she slipped the ring off her finger, her hand felt lighter, her heart even more so. She opened the closet and touched each item before deciding what to take. A dress from their anniversary, a sweater from a winter trip, a scarf he once said brought out her eyes. She smiled faintly, not with nostalgia, but gratitude for what once was. Every piece she folded felt like reclaiming something, her time, her voice, her life. Leaving wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of remembering who she was before she forgot. Before leaving, Anna walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, the furniture, the small marks of a shared life. She stopped by a photo of them on their wedding day. Two faces full of dreams. She smiled softly and whispered, "Thank you, not for the pain, but for the lessons that came with it." She turned off the lights one by one, her footsteps light, her breathing steady. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. Free. Machine, der sight. Instead free. Outside, the night air was cool and still. The neighborhood slept as Anna stepped onto the porch, suitcase in hand. She looked up at the stars, feeling small but alive. The house behind her stood silent, not as a prison anymore, but as a chapter she had finished writing. She whispered to herself, "It's time." Then she walked toward her car, the wheels of her suitcase echoing softly against the pavement. Some journeys begin not when you arrive, but when you finally decide to leave. The sky began to soften from black to blue as Anna's car moved through the empty streets. The world outside was still half asleep. Quiet houses, streetlights flickering out, birds testing the morning air. Her hands rested calmly on the steering wheel. For the first time, her heart didn't race. She wasn't running away. She was returning to herself. Every mile put distance between her and the life that once defined her. She rolled the window down, letting the wind wash over her face, carrying away the last traces of the night before. As the sun rose, she stopped at a small cafe near the coast. She sat by the window with a cup of coffee, warming her hands, watching the world wake up. Strangers moved around her, laughing softly, unaware of her story. And she liked it that way. For once, she didn't feel invisible. She felt anonymous, untethered. The world no longer revolved around loss. It simply existed, and she was part of it again. She called her sister Claire later that morning. "I left," she said simply. There was a pause, then warmth. "I'm proud of you," Claire whispered. Anna smiled, looking out at the sea. It wasn't victory she felt. It was quiet acceptance. The kind that comes when you finally stop needing closure and start choosing peace. The sound of the ocean filled the silence between their words, steady and timeless, reminding her that endings are just new beginnings written in a different tense. By afternoon, she reached a small seaside inn. She carried her suitcase up the narrow stairs and unlocked a new door. Plain, simple, quiet. Setting the bag down, she looked around at the unfamiliar walls, then out the window at the vast blue horizon. No photos, no memories, just space. She inhaled deeply, letting the scent of salt and sunlight fill her chest. Freedom didn't roar. It whispered, and in that whisper, she found herself again. That evening, Anna walked barefoot along the shoreline. The sun dipped low, setting the water ablaze with gold and rose. She felt the cool sand beneath her feet, the gentle pull of the tide brushing against her ankles. Each wave carried something away: regret, fear, the echo of his voice. She stopped, looking at the horizon, and smiled softly. "I'm okay," she whispered. The wind caught her words and carried them far across the water. She closed her eyes, lifted her face to the fading light, and for the first time in years, she felt whole.